I grew up in a broken home. My parents divorced when I was just before adolescence, and growing up I didn't have much discipline from my mom, who I lived with, and my brother, my older brother, and I started just pretty much doing whatever I wanted at the time, which for a teenager usually isn't a very good thing. I started using drugs and hanging out with a lot of different people, which kind of was a surrogate family at the time, but at the end of the day it was pretty unhealthy. And after I actually started smoking pot is when I really started getting depressed, which led to a sort of addictive cycle, using pot to, you know, kind of medicate my own emotional pain and just to kind of numb me. And I used pot pretty much all throughout my adolescence and high school, and was smoking cigarettes, you know, drinking alcohol, coffee, mushrooms a little bit. Nothing too intense, is almost socially acceptable, pretty much everything I was doing at the time. Anyways, I managed to get pretty good grades and went off to school at UC Santa Cruz, and that's kind of where everything came to a head, and where my my manic episode really blossomed into full-blown psychosis. Before I had been, like I said, really depressed, suicidally depressed. Never acted on it, but you know, 15, 16, 17, I was pretty much depressed the whole time, with short spurts of maybe 2 or 3 weeks of just lots of energy, being happy for seemingly no reason, really creative, doing music, you know, hanging out with my friends, just, but those were just slight punctuations and pretty much a pattern of pretty heavy depression. Anyway, so when I got to UC Santa Cruz, I was pretty unprepared for, you know, real life and being independent on my own. I didn't really have any foundation for that, or way of really coping with the amount of stress and different things that were going on at the time. So my habits and ways of dealing with things hadn't really changed. I was still, you know, smoking pot almost daily, drinking a lot of coffee, smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, etc. And I think the combination of the stress of school, just the newness of the environment, I was in a new town, and just I wasn't used to being around people like that, living with people all the time, and anyways, so I was doing mushrooms as well, and it was just the end of the first term there, and also I was really into this one girl, and so that love kind of caused its own sort of chemical imbalance, if you will. Anyway, so it kind of just spiraled up and up and up in this manic episode. With a few days of loss of sleep, I totally lost it completely. And was in psychosis for a number of days before anyone really figured out what was going on, or before I even acted or said anything in a way that it would indicate that I was really having severe mental problems, because I really kept to myself about it. I didn't verbalize much. It was only eventually when I did, during a existentialism final of all things, I went up and tried to talk to someone about like how I figured out like this whole thing, and it's kind of a cross between the Truman Show and like Peter Pan, and just all this stuff is, you know, what I believe psychosis is actually your subconscious mind pretty much taking over your conscious mind, and you not really having the tools or ability to translate those verbally in a rational way that people can understand. And especially with loss of sleep, like my dream world just came alive. Is pretty intense. But the weird thing about all that is, right after that came to a head, the first thing that happened was like the campus security, and I think the city police of Santa Cruz, I just went straight to jail. They just had me in a holding tank for a few hours, and then released me onto the street. And so I ran around Santa Cruz for a while, and then eventually somehow got a bus back up to campus, and all my friends were concerned. And anyways, to make a long story shorter, a day or two later, I talked to the school people, and they figured out what was really going on, and they sent me to a mental hospital, like where I was probably supposed to go the first time, and that's where my first experience with like being in the mental health system really started. I probably was put on some drugs. I honestly don't really remember a lot of that first psychotic episode, and then went home, skipped the spring term of school, and then skipped the winter term, and then came back for the spring term actually and took a couple of classes and did well. I passed my classes and then went home again for the summer, but by the end of the summer, again, my life hadn't changed. My habits and patterns had not changed, so I basically spiraled into another psychotic episode from a manic episode. And this sort of pattern happened with hospitalization about 10 or 12 times in a span of about 2 or 3 years, starting in the end of 1999 till about 2002. And so anyways, my last real psychotic episode was almost 9 years ago now, 8 or 9 years ago. And what had happened between my last psychotic episode and me starting to become well was a lot of things, actually. I was put on medication, like I said, and got on SSI somehow, and I was living in this town in the middle of California. It's kind of a bigger town called Stockton, and I didn't have to work. I was kind of separated from my friends in my hometown of Ventura in Southern California. My road to recovery really began with, first of all, taking personal responsibility for a lot of the bad choices I made, which led to that, and then kind of understanding the dynamics of a lot of stuff, like family stuff, social stuff, the physical side of stuff, emotional stuff. And I began to just look at it more as a whole health problem, my body, my mind, and everything. And also the spiritual side of things was very important as well. I was really disconnected from health in all these areas for a very long time. I did take medication for a number of years, but moved up to Portland and got a job. Eventually got off SSI, and eventually weaned myself off of medication, and I've been medication-free for about 4 or 5 years now. And I have a place to live, a car, a job. You know, I'm not perfect, but I wish, I just wish that people would know that psychiatric medication and the mental health system as we know it isn't the only way to get better, and there is hope outside of all that, and it's possible. So, and I got better. So, thank you.